again, everybody, to There's Too Many Podcasts. It's a podcast about podcasts. My name is Chris Sherman. I'm so happy to be with you today. This podcast is a little bit less about podcasts. Jason Sherman is my guest, an entrepreneur from Philly, one of my favorite cities. We talk a little bit about that at the beginning, so I won't drone on, but oh man, I'm itching for a cheesesteak. Just thinking about this city of brotherly love. Strap on Your Boots is the name of Jason's podcast, although we talked we talked a good amount about AI because I am curious about it and somewhat skeptical, but I don't think as skeptical as some people are, although I did push him a little bit on a couple of things. Uh, you know, there is a real fear that the creative process is going to be lost to AI. And Jason kind of makes a couple of counterpoints to that, which I think are interesting. And you'll have to give a listen to hear his thoughts on that. But I don't know. I do use AI. His app that we talk about in this podcast, Spinner, is just a great idea. And this is the thing. AI can be used for good, can be used for evil, just like anything can be used for good or evil. And, I think this Spinner app is just a wonderful case of it being used for good, trying to connect lonely people out there. And boy, are there a lot of them nowadays. So anyways, Jason Sherman is coming up. Before that, want to always say, please visit the website, toomanypodcast.com. Also, follow us on Instagram and Threads. Right now, that's all we've got. Blue Sky has gone away. I tried with Blue Sky. I really did. I just didn't see the point. I'm sorry. I am also on Twitter, and I will be promoting the podcast on Twitter at my handle, at Chris Sherman. So, Chris Sherman Media on Twitter. And again, it's just at Chris Sherman. And that's probably the best way to follow the podcast. I don't think I'm going to create a separate account. I don't know. I go back and forth on social media. Everybody who is in the podcasting world who's telling me to market this podcast is all saying social media. So I think I have to figure this out and just grow up. But it's not my forte. Maybe this is something Jason can help me with. I don't know. So again, Jason Sherman, Strap on Your Boots is the name of the podcast. It was a really good conversation with him, not only about his podcast, but the entrepreneurial spirit that he has, the things that he covers on the podcast, a little bit on AI, a little bit on his app. Is actually got a couple of different apps that we're going to talk about. It's a really good conversation. Again, if you're somebody who's maybe apprehensive about AI, maybe you're feeling skeptical about it, so give Jason a chance, and I think he's going to win you over. Here he is. So I always like to tell my guests that the audience knows this already, but because I haven't released any of these episodes yet, you guys have no idea. But so I'm actually recording right now. We're underway. I'm really kind of just getting into these and seeing how it goes and editing as needed. But so far, most of them have not really needed any editing. There's only one podcast, and that was mostly my fault, of course. That's needed some editing. So we are here. Jason Sherman, Strap On Your Boots is the name of his podcast. I want to talk about your app. I want to talk about the podcast. You're a Philly guy, though, right?
I am a Philly guy. Yo, yo, yo.
I'm in Cleveland, and Cleveland is my hometown. I just moved back a little less than a year ago, but I always say Cleveland and Philly are very, very, very similar cities. You
Yeah.
guys are almost like our big brother in a
Yeah,
way.
we're neighbors.
Very much just in the frame of mind and the kind of people that the mindset, blue collar, I guess, is the traditional way to put it. But yeah, Philly is one of my favorite cities, and I know I saw that I think LeBron James is on the target list for the 76ers, who might be the thirstiest off-season NBA team because everybody's on their target list. But I know they're going to go after LeBron, and I thought to myself, that's not such a bad idea because he could relate to Philadelphia, and I think he'd be a great addition. That city, he would do well in that city.
Hell yeah, man. We would welcome him with open arms.
I'm not a Sixers. Are you a Phillies fan at all?
I'm not a sports fan, but I do like basketball. So, I mean, I went to see the 76ers when I was a kid. Charles Barkley was on the team at
Oh
that
yeah.
point. So that's the last time I saw the Sixers play, I think. I might have
Wow.
went I might have went like several years ago with some friends. They had box seats, but we weren't watching the game. We were in the box drinking and eating because we hadn't seen our friends in so many years, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That sounds about
So,
right. Yeah, I always, I started this podcast. I am a sports guy,
okay.
and I work with a lot of small colleges. And if you know anything about education, you know small colleges not doing so well. So I
Right.
started this podcast as kind of a way to put something out there to say, okay, I don't just know sports, but here I am talking about sports with somebody who could care less about sports right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, I couldn't care less, but I mean, I do follow a little bit because a lot of people around me follow sports. And, on my app, we have a sports squad. So people are always posting sports related stuff. So, I'm not completely oblivious to sports, but I wouldn't call myself a sports fan.
Gotcha.
I'm more of a movie fan.
Okay, so let's move on then from the sports and talk a little bit about strap on your boots and this podcast idea. Now, um, what do you think the number one thing, or what would you tell an entrepreneur just getting started? What would be the number one thing, piece of advice that you give to that person?
I always tell people to build as much as they possibly can by themselves before reaching out to others for help. Because more often than not, people are trying to get a team put together or try to get developers to help them build an app or try to get funds for from investors before they really build anything. They just have a concept. And unless you have a rich uncle or you used to work at Facebook or you graduated from Stanford or MIT, you're not going to get any of those investors to be interested in what you have to do. So I always say, try to validate your concept. Maybe make some mock-ups, show some people, do a survey, try to show it to as many people as possible before you start showing it to, people to join your team. Because that's the biggest mistake. Do some research. They don't even do research. They just assume their idea is so special and they haven't even found the 100 competitors if you do a simple Google search.
Everybody thinks they're first to something, and that's almost impossible in this day and age to be.
Absolutely. It doesn't make any sense to me to not do some basic research. So that's the first thing I tell people is do some research, look at your competition, what's out there, and is your idea really that unique?
I always tell people now you're talking more in the tech space. I run my own business. It's a freelance business, so it's just me. I don't need venture capital. I just need to rank on Google and people will find me and I make money. It's pretty simple what I do compared to the things that you're talking about. But I always tell people, have a passion first and foremost for what you do. And then very quickly early on, you're going to realize if you actually have that passion or not. What I always tell people is if you don't love doing the invoice part of being an entrepreneur on a Saturday morning, you're not going to make it and just get a real job.
Oh,
But
absolutely. Because you mentioned being passionate. I mean, you have to be committed to this thing for years, right? I mean, you can't just
oh,
assume,
yeah.
people think, people think they see the news, right? They see that this AI startup or this e-commerce brand or whoever got $100 million, and they think that they can do that too. They think they can copy it and do the same thing, but they don't realize how long it took that company to get to that point. They also don't realize how many thousands and probably tens and hundreds of thousands of other companies didn't get that funding or
Hmm.
didn't make that money. They all failed. So the news really glamorizes how great it is to be a business owner, but it really never shows you all the negatives. It never shows you all the failures. Sometimes you see them, but not often. It's usually like So and so became a unicorn, so and so got $1 billion, so and so just sold to Microsoft, and so on and so forth. So they have to realize it's going to take you minimum 5 years to be successful. And then from there, you got to stick through it for even more years. But you should be able to validate your concept within a year or two. And if you haven't done it by then, move on to the next thing.
And when you talk about failure, I think what a lot of people don't realize is some of those people you were talking about who did succeed probably failed a bunch of times before that as well.
Oh, big time, big time. It's I'm on my what startup number am I on? One, two, three, four, five, seven. I'm on like my sixth startup at this point, seventh or eighth, maybe even. And it finally started to succeed after all these attempts at other ideas. It takes a long time. You got to learn. You got to learn a lot. And from my perspective, I've been learning from my mistakes for 20 years to the point that now I'm an expert at so many different things. It's hard for me to make mistakes. And I'm still learning. Like I might still make a simple mistake once in a while,
Yep.
you just keep adding it to the list of things to never do again, or things to do differently next time. And that's really where my podcast came from, and where my book and my course originated from, where the podcast came from that. But it was more about trying to help other people avoid all of my mistakes and trying to help people succeed without spending years and tens of thousands of dollars with nothing to show for it.
Right, yeah. And some of these things also can be out of your control. I was at about the 10-year point in my business when COVID hit. And that year I made $9,000. That was it. So, there are other factors out of your control, and you need to have that emergency in place so that you can ride out these external factors through even no fault of your own. Things happen in the world.
Yeah, agreed. It's true because, before COVID, there were a lot of businesses that were thriving. And then during COVID, they all shut down, especially restaurants. But it's more so the fact that to be an entrepreneur means to be adaptable. You
Right.
have to be able to see what's coming, adapt to it, change, pivot if you have to. If you're about to fail, figure out a way to keep going. You have to be able to be flexible. There's too many people out there who only have one skill set or one idea or one business, and then they don't budge and they fail, and then they crash and burn. One of the things I've been doing for the past even longer, 30 years, has been learning new skills as often as I possibly can. And what that has enabled me to do is a variety of different businesses that have nothing to do with each other, which means if one is not doing so well, the other three are.
Yeah.
And if two other ones aren't doing well, the other four are. And it's just I'm able to bounce around and cherry pick what's doing well at that moment.
Yeah, it's almost like owning stocks. You can't just go all in one stock. You spread it
Yeah.
out, and that way you can ride out when one's doing bad, maybe another's doing good. And I know the very first thing that I did when the first part of my business is marketing. So I had SEO clients. This was in 2012. And the first thing that I did was panic, and I said, I got to get big contracts as quickly as possible. So I signed 4 contracts that would have put me where I needed to be immediately. So immediately I had that success. Guess what?
Wow.
Guess what happened?
Uh-oh.
2 months later, 2 of those contracts were gone, and I had lost half of my income, and I was
Ugh.
bleeding money because I didn't understand that in the SEO and the marketing space, there's nothing guaranteed, and there are people who are. You're asking other small businesses basically to give you money as their marketing person
Right.
to get them more money, but with SEO, that stuff doesn't happen right away, and people panic. So, what I realized in that space, I said, okay, instead of having 4 big clients, let me play the long game here. Let's not panic. Let's not try to get all the money up front. And let's go after smaller clients. So 8 to 10 to 12 smaller clients. That way, if I lose one, two, three, even 4, I'm
Yeah.
only losing a third of my money rather than being wiped out 50% overnight. And it's those kinds of things that you can't, it's almost like you're starting over as a baby, right out of
Yeah.
the womb as a business owner. And you have to learn to walk, and you have to learn to talk, and you have to learn all of these things that you've talked about.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, of doing it instead of having four big clients working towards the 8 to 12 smaller ones. I actually worked, since we're different backgrounds. I mean, I do a lot of marketing and SEO, and I have done that for a lot of clients, but it kind of fell into place because I was already their technology service provider. So when you build a website or a mobile app or a platform for a client, naturally they're going to need marketing help once it's built.
Right.
So that was kind of a secondary service on my end. But my point is, I actually started backwards. So leading into where I am today, I had to get those 8 to 12 smaller clients to keep the lights on, because this was now 2005, 2006 when I really first started taking on web clients to build websites for them. Between 2005 and 2012, so when you started, I was kind of 7 years in,
Mm-hmm.
and I was taking as many clients as I could possibly get, whether it was like a restaurant who needed a website, or a nail salon, or a doctor, anybody who needed a website. I was one of those guys building those simple mom and pop shop websites, and I was trying to do as many as possible, and then of course helping them market it. But it was finally building up and building up and building up over years of fine tuning my process, fine tuning my sales pitch, fine tuning my quality of work, hiring other programmers to start giving me better quality over and over again.
Right.
So finally I could land the big client, like the museum or the school or the big business, and get that one client. And I'll tell you what, for me personally, it was so much better when I was able to land just one big client and focus on that one big client for one whole year, versus having to deal with 8 to 12 people who wanted to change that color and that button and that link every single day
Yeah.
for 12, for a year. It was a nightmare. Plus, those people don't pay as much. Whereas a contract, if you're getting, like, say, $500 for a website for a restaurant, or $1,000, $2,000, whatever, and you got to deal with this person for a couple months, versus getting a big organization like a museum, and they're going to give you 50 grand or whatever to work on their website. Obviously you want that one big client. So I can see both sides, but from what I remember, you have to work your way up to the bigger clients by showing that you can do the work, right? I mean,
Right.
if that's really the key.
Yeah, you really have to have that portfolio. Tell me
Yep.
just a little bit. We've grazed this subject already, but just kind of going back, have you always wanted to be your own boss? Have you always wanted to go it alone, so to speak?
Yeah, it's I love this question, because I mean, I've told the story before, but for some reason I've always wanted to not really be my own boss, but I always wanted to make a business out of ideas or things that I noticed in the market. And the first time it ever happened for me was when I was in sixth grade, seventh grade. I was in middle school. I was just a kid. I wasn't even a teenager yet. I was between like 10 and 12. And I noticed in Europe, because my family's from Spain, they sold these really cool, colorful bracelets that were very popular.
Hmm.
And they were really cheap. They were like, 10 to 25 cents a piece. So I basically bought as many as I could afford. And when I got back to the States and I'm in school, I would just fill my arm up with as many of them as possible. And throughout the day, of course, people were like, hey, I want one of those. And they would buy them off me for $1. So at the end of the day, I'd have like $100 in my pocket as an 11-year-old, and go home and get more because I bought as many as I could. And I keep selling them until I sold out. And then by the end of the whole deal, I was up like $500, and I was a kid. I was able to buy a Nintendo, or whatever I thought was good to buy at the time. And I realized, hey, I can sell things to people and make money from it. So I started doing that. I started doing that little by little, just finding little things that I could do. And eventually it started to become bigger things and bigger things. And um, I always jumped onto technology. Like I was a one of the first eBay sellers back in the '90s. I built one of the first websites that got 1 million users for underground music back in the '90s. I was always kind of leading edge in terms of like what is available to me that I can capitalize on. And I just kept doing that. And then, of course, people needed my help to learn how to do it. So that's where my first business came from. My consulting company, Go To Consulting, I started that in 2003. That's when I realized people need my help to build computers, build websites, etc. And I said, I'm charging them. I wasn't charging them for a while.
Right.
But then I started charging them. And that's when I realized, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to create things out of nothing and make money from it. And I've never looked back.
It's really interesting to me. You have a similar story because I was doing the same thing. Cleveland, Ohio, 100 inches of snow a year. We're in indoor recess a lot of times when you're a kid. So we were inside, and my friends and I, we would be trading basketball cards or baseball cards or whatever. And that's kind of how that got started, that passion to, oh, I could do this, I could be an entrepreneur started. And we had we had so much money in our lockers that eventually our teacher stepped in. Thanks a lot, Miss Albert, for shutting down my entrepreneurial spirit, by the way. But we had hundreds of dollars and all these cards that were worth so much money in our lockers that the teachers eventually shut it down. But we all had a lot of fun with that, and it's something that kind of never left me. My dad was he had the typical union baby boomer job career
Right.
at a power plant, swinging shifts, but he also hustled on the side. He had his barber's license. He fixed air conditioners, and he loved the fact that I was not going down the traditional path. He really enjoyed that. So yeah, just very similar ages there and stories somewhat. But strap on your boots. Okay, you talked a little bit about kind of being on the cutting edge with eBay, with mobile apps, with a lot of different things, websites, and all that. I noticed strapped on your boots when I was reviewing some of the podcasts. I didn't get to too many of them because boy, I'm listening to a lot of podcasts these days, getting ready for these interviews. But I did listen to a few, and just a lot of AI stuff. The
Yeah.
AI powered vending machine one for some reason drew me in, and I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. But
Those
uh,
started those started popping up lately. The AI companies, because ChatGPT came out in 22 and 23. Everyone started coming out with companies and raising money, and even I have an AI startup. So it's AI to me is very interesting. Like I said, I always try to jump on top of whatever is current, and right now that's AI. So that's why you're seeing a lot of AI interviews. But I also do a lot of other, like the one I just released this Monday was about a company in the Ukraine trying to help people network and do business in the Ukraine during the war. So it has nothing to do with AI, but um, yeah, I mean, I think that for me personally, I like to interview people who have interesting companies where they have a story to tell, and that entrepreneurs listening are going to actually learn things that they can use in their own startup to succeed. That's the goal.
I am just to go back to the AI stuff for a little bit. I wanted to push this for a couple of reasons. There's a lot of people, myself included, who are maybe a little concerned. Just this past, and this episode is going to air in the future, folks, but we're just past Memorial Day weekend. And there was a lot of big coverage about, AI Google searches basically telling everybody to eat rocks and put gasoline in their pasta. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on AI and talking to some of these people. Do you feel more hopeful for it, or more concerned, or none of the above?
It's a great question. No one has asked me that yet on an interview, so I'm really happy to answer it. Personally, I've been using AI for several years now in a number of ways. It has transformed my productivity. It has allowed me to focus on the more creative aspects of my work versus the tedious documentation and proofreading and
Mm-hmm. Those
re-
invoices we talked about.
invoices, spreadsheets, presentations, you name it. I mean, even research. It's just it's allowed me to basically learn at a extremely fast pace, and also has helped me move faster. Like I feel like I'm saving 80% of my time. So I don't see any downsides to AI. I think that the people that are complaining about the copyright stuff and people losing jobs and all that stuff, if they just started using AI, they would see that it does not replace them. And here's an example why. The movie industry, Hollywood, they just did a whole, strike because they were saying that their AI likeness is being used without their permission and they're going to be losing jobs. I'm a filmmaker. I've made 3 movies. I want to make more movies. Am I going to use AI in my movies to replace actors? No, of course not. Am I going to use AI to help me make storyboards using Midjourney? Heck yeah, because it's something that I could never do before. I could never do a storyboard. I can't draw. And I don't have the money to hire some illustrator to sit there and draw out 40 scenes for me and get charged I don't know how much money. But Midjourney, I can visualize my story as I'm writing it to help me understand the details and the elements needed to really craft the settings and the scenes. So I can get into a lot more details about it, but AI has transformed my startups. It's helped me with my podcast. It's helped me with my writing, and everybody who uses it says the same thing. I don't know anyone who says they use AI and they're like, oh, it sucks, it doesn't work, and it doesn't make any sense. We've been waiting for this our whole lives, right? If you think about it, we've been waiting for the Star Trek communicator. We got the iPhone. We've been waiting for you know rockets to the moon. We have them. We've been waiting for communications and internet and GPS satellites. We have all of that now. We have what we were talking about 50 years ago was the future. We are literally living in it now. And the last piece that was missing was AI. And now we have it. We have that final piece. Of course, it has to become even more intelligent to solve the world's problems.
Yeah, it can't be
And
telling people to eat rocks, which right now it is.
correct, it has to be, artificial general intelligence, or as Ray Kurzweil will mention, the singularity, when the moment that AI becomes smarter than all of human history combined. We haven't achieved that goal yet, but when we reach that moment when AI is smarter than all of human knowledge and all of human history combined in one AI, that's when it can tell you, well, here's how you cure cancer. Here's how you stop the droughts. Here's how you stop climate change. Here's how you get to a different solar system in light speed. Here's how you live for 500 years with a virtual computer chip in your brain. It just tells you how to do it, and it builds the technology and builds the machinery and the computers needed to do all of it. That's what it's meant to do.
Okay, well that's all well and good, but let me push back a little bit because if it gets to
Sure.
that point, who's to say it's going to do those things in our interests?
Well, it needs to be trained properly. I mean, what are the 3 laws of AI from Isaac Asimov? An AI or robot should not harm a human. A robot should I forget the other 2, but it's a robot should not harm any, or should not harm anything else and indirectly harm a human, and a robot should never harm itself or indirectly a human. It's always about not hurting the human, right?
Right.
I should know these, but it always ends up being not harming the human. If an AI is programmed in a way to never hurt a human, it really shouldn't. Now, if it's about to do that, there's got to be some sort of failsafe. And I believe that that's what the governments and the companies and the private organizations, the AI companies and the public are all fighting about now. It's how do we protect the world from nuclear Armageddon, because the AI says the humans are a virus. We need to exterminate them and
Right.
make Earth livable and stop fighting, because the truth is humans are pretty despicable in a lot of ways. We're constantly fighting each other, bombing each other. There's wars going on in different countries as we speak right now. People are greedy, wealth inequality. There's so many things we could talk about, which is a totally different topic, that AI would see as a threat to the Earth and a threat to humanity. So I agree with you, but if we can put some fail safes in place, a kill switch that says, if this is getting out of hand, you push a button and it just knocks them all out. They just turn off. EMP, something like that. That's really all we could really do. But it's scary times, man. I agree, but it's also very amazing times.
I'm giggling a little bit because it sounds like we're talking about a Futurama episode from 10 years ago. Those people on that writing staff were so far ahead of their time with some of this stuff. But anyways, I was just thinking out loud. I'm sorry. A couple more things, and I do want to talk about that Ukraine business network. So we're going to move on to that here in just a minute. But a couple of things that you said about Hollywood. Um, I remember when the holograms came out and Kurt Cobain and Tupac were performing at Coachella or wherever they had them.
Right.
There's certain things, and it's natural for us as humans to be leery and to be suspect of this technology. And I'm not an overt capitalist by any stretch, but I do think the free market will help us along as well because I don't think you're going to make an AI movie, but I know some jackass is going to make an AI movie.
Oh, of course, they've already
And
made a bunch of good trailers too. They've
yeah,
already made.
and
Yeah,
and it's going to be terrible and the free market will react to that. We haven't seen those holograms as much if you noticed over the last few years. And
yeah, they've been
if
kind of disappearing. Yeah.
people did not want that. So I do think that the free market is going to take care of some of that. My only concern when I look at what Scarlett Johansson is saying
Right.
about her voice and things like that, I do think that's a legitimate thing that Hollywood would do to
Yeah.
try to undercut their actors,
And
though.
and I'll be honest with you, ever since I was using Sky, I thought it was her, right? Because the movie Her was one of my favorite movies of all time.
Hmm.
And when I heard that voice, I'm like, that's Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
But of course, Sam Altman says that he hired the actress before he even asked Scarlett. But we don't know what the real truth is, except for like the emails that were exchanged and whatnot. But look, he really tried to copy that sound because the world wanted that, right? That's what we want. We want Scarlett Johansson or the character from the movie Her to be our AI love interest or our friend. It's really what everybody's looking for, right? And it's kind of it's kind of a reality now. It really is. And I think and by the way, you said I'm not working on an AI movie, but last year I did make an AI music video. Now, for my app Spinner, which is a video friendship app, it's all about hobbies, interests for people who are isolated, people who are alone in the world. We have a loneliness epidemic. The U.S. Surgeon General declared. So our app it combats that. It says, hey, you want to meet people who like movies or sports or dogs or coffee or hiking. That's what the app's all about. So I made this song called Spin Spin Spinner. It's all about loneliness and getting out there and meeting new people and meeting new friends. And I thought to myself, I need to make a music video to show what the app is all about. But do you know how long it takes to make a music video? Do you know how expensive it is and how the actors, the locations, the
Yeah.
equipment? It's
Just
it's it's
just
it's hard.
shooting it itself,
Yeah.
you're talking 16 at least hours.
Yep. So I ended up using Midjourney to create the images I needed for the scenes for each beat or each bar, each four beat bar. And then I used Runway ML video to take those images and create videos out of them. And if you watch this video, you go on YouTube, you type in spin, spin, spinner music video, and you watch this video, it is mind blowing how incredible it came out. And I had a few people tell me they didn't even know it was AI. They thought it was real. So it just goes to show you the level of quality that we have today. Imagine what we're going to have in 5 years. Now, that being said, you said some jackass is going to make an AI movie.
Yes.
Just like people don't like CGI, there's people that won't watch Transformers, they won't watch Pixar movies, they won't watch anything with heavy CGI in it because they don't like it. People are going to also not like to watch the AI movies, but there's going to be a millions and billions of people who do want to watch it because the Marvel universe and the DC movies and all the fantasy, Lord of the Rings type stuff, it's all super, super, super popular. Like Avatar is the best selling movie of all time. The entire movie was CGI, there was nothing real in it. So it just goes to show you just because people don't like something doesn't mean that a lot of other people aren't gonna like it. They're gonna love it.
Yeah, like I said, I think the free market will help us along with that. I'm not as concerned. I guess the point I was trying to make is it's taking over Hollywood in the same way that people in Hollywood might think it's going to take over and kill all the careers. I don't see that happening.
Me
But you're
neither.
right. There's always going to be a market for something. The Spinner app, I did want to talk about Ukraine before I let you go, but since you brought up Spinner, I'm really kind of curious. You've hit on this already, the loneliness epidemic, and this is an app that uh, boy, I go through this myself. I'm dating somebody right now, so I'm in a good place, but as a 42-year-old man who has led an unconventional life, I have no friends outside of that relationship. I have
It's hard.
friends who have moved. I see my friend who lives in Indiana maybe once or twice a year now that I'm in Ohio again. But my friends, when I moved back to Ohio, I have found either that I just have nothing in common with them, they don't have time, they have kids, and if they do have time, they're typically with friends who have other kids and they can go play and my friends can get a break. So it's really really hard when you're 41, 42-year-old man starting over in your life the way that I have the last couple of years. So I'm really curious about what this app can do. But
Yeah, I mean, think about it like this too. I'm 47, so I'm not far off from you. I also have a girlfriend, but I also lost a lot of my friends to COVID, and not in the sense that they're dead, but it just isolated us. It made
mhm.
everybody not want to hang
Right.
out anymore. Most of my friends are married with kids, careers. They're too busy. They moved away. It's just really hard to meet not the people that I already know. That's what Facebook is for.
Yeah.
I'm looking for people who I don't know who like the same things I like, and there's nothing out there to help you do that. Social media is toxic. Dating apps are a mess,
Yep.
and meetup.com is for group events that aren't very personal. It's more about like a photography event, and they get canceled a lot. So I said, how can I let
Can
people
I can
meet
I
each?
stop you just for a second? I want to say a couple of things about Meetup because I tried it. Anybody who suggests Meetup needs to stop suggesting that blindly to people. The people that I encountered were some of the worst of humanity. Number one,
Yeah,
there was that subsect who they have no social skills whatsoever, and it was also it's almost like it's designed to be a social calendar to give people a place to go, things to do, and then go home. What it seems like Spinner, what your app is doing, is actually forging connections, which is something that Meetup does not do, period.
correct. We call ourselves the meetup before the meetup because we actually have an event section on the app too. So think about it like this. Let's say, you said you're into sports.
Right.
One of my friends on the app, Danny, he went to WrestleMania here in Philly, him and his friends. He met a couple people through the app, through the WrestleMania squads or groups, and there was a WrestleMania event on the app. He talked to all these people in the squad about WrestleMania. They posted videos, articles. They talked back and forth. They posted videos of them talking, audio messages, and they basically became friends through the app and then met at WrestleMania before it happens, like the tailgating and whatnot. They got to meet in person. But the point is, they got to know each other beforehand. And the best part about the app is that you're making an authentic connection with somebody
Right.
before you meet in person. Then when you meet in person, you're already friends. Versus Meetup, where you really got to wait till you get there, and then you meet these, like you said, these despicable humans, and it's not very friendly, So and then we talk about AI a lot. And at the end of 2022, I was all about ChatGPT. Nobody I knew had heard of it. Nobody I knew was using it. As always, I was one of the first ones. I was actually one of the first people to use ChatGPT in November of 2022. Probably the first day it came out, I was immediately using it. And I remember I was in Paris with my girlfriend in December, a month later, a couple weeks later, and I'm using it all the time. And she's asking me what the hell I'm doing, and I'm like, I'm getting an itinerary for us here in Paris, and it gave me the best itinerary that we ended up using. Right, so I got back home and I told my team, we got to put this into Spinner. We got to give people the ability to talk to this AI in the app. And we built our own AI chat friend called Spinny, who helps people in the app to navigate the app, answer questions about the app, and then connect you to people based on your interests and your location or squads or events. And now you can say, hey, my name's Christopher. Hey, Spinny, what should I do? And then it'll say, like, well, you like sports, you like movies, you like hiking. Here's a couple squads that are those interests.
Hmm.
Here's 5 people who live in Cleveland that like those things as well. You should talk to them. It kind of helps you become more social. And then we got this overwhelming response from our community that they loved the AI so much. They said, how can we make our own? How can we customize Spinny to be our own personal friend?
Interesting.
We couldn't do that because it was built into the infrastructure. But I realized this is the next big thing. So that's where Vengo AI came in. In case you saw that, I don't know if you saw that in my website or anything, but we built a separate standalone B2B SaaS product called Vengo AI that allows you to create your custom AI friend or based on your knowledge. So Christopher has a podcast, a blog, websites, SEO content, articles, interviews, you name it. You have so much content, but you're not monetizing it. You can take that content, train the AI through our system, and then you can use one line of code to put your AI chat friend anywhere you want on any website, and people can now talk to Christopher. And
Wow.
it sounds like you, it acts like you, it has your personality. It's not instructional like ChatGPT, it's conversational because we built it to be just like you. That's what Vengo AI is. That's what we built. And we're trying to now tap into brands, celebrities, influencers, small business owners, podcasters, anybody who has content and allow them to do this. And we were lucky enough to get grants from Microsoft, NVIDIA, OpenAI, Stripe, and 11 Labs. We got these $300,000 worth of grants, which enabled us to build on their infrastructure. We wouldn't have been able to do that if not. So we were validated. It was huge, man. And I'm just super excited to see where we go the rest of this year.
So, how long does this take? How long do I, as a user, have to work with this thing to get it to have that my personality? When you say my personality, how long does that process entail?
That's a great question. We built we built a web app version of this. So Vengo.ai is a web app version of it where you yourself can go on the creator dashboard and create your own AI. It takes you through each step on one page and it gives you examples. It might take you a couple of hours tops, maybe even less if you already have everything compiled. Doing the actual creating takes 30 seconds.
Wow.
Once you have the text files that you need, the PDFs and text files of all your knowledge base, it takes 30 seconds to build your AI. Now, what we're doing as the B2B side, we're doing it for you. So you're basically telling us, hey, Jason, I want to have an AI on my website. And then we're going to ask you, what do you want us to put on it? And you're going to give us links to your podcast, your website, your blog. You're going to send us your book in PDF format. You're going to give us anything you have that we can use, and we're going to do all the training for you. All we're going to give you is one line of code, and you're going to stick it on your website. And now people can talk to you 24/7 when you're sleeping, because most people get like a million DMs and they can't answer them. But with this, it answers them 24/7.
Really, really interesting stuff. I think that, we've talked about this. You and I are in our 40s, but this is really becoming a worse and worse problem with younger people. Now, my girlfriend is 26. She is a social butterfly. I mean, she has friends, she has things going on, but she has two brothers who are a little bit older, a little bit younger, but still in that age frame.
Right.
They don't do anything, it doesn't seem like, from our conversations. And this is a very narrow view of the world for me. It's one family group that I have to look at here. But it seems to be that what I'm seeing is a lot of younger men are struggling a little bit more than younger women, and this could be something that can
1,000%.
really keep them not only not only does it help them maybe meet people or have a social life or get back out there, but it keeps them out of trouble because I mean, I'm kind of floored by the trouble that and the rabbit holes that some of these guys are going down, and what it's doing to their psyche is not going to be good for us long term.
I mean, men historically are not emotional people, right?
No.
We are in closed behind closed doors, but women are the ones that are having girls' night outs and days at the spa and the salon and getting together for drinks and hanging out and doing fun things and having girl trips. But guys don't do that. We're bros. We don't really hang out and hug each other and get our nails done. So, it's either sports or nothing really. And so we end up being lonely and depressed because we can't tell people that we're, depressed or sad because they're going to say, suck it up and be a man. Right.
Yeah. Well,
So,
that's our generation. That is definitely the mindset. I don't know if that's as prevalent nowadays. It seems like it's getting better, but you're right. It's overall that is true.
so that's why, I feel like if you look at Spinner, most of our members are men who are looking for friends. We do have a lot of females too, but it's skewed. It's more like, 70% men and 30% women, or 60% men and 40% women. It's a lot more men. And since we're not a dating app, we're a friendship app, it's literally just people having conversations,
Yeah.
people sharing their lives, and it's connecting us all with people around the world. It's actually a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun on the app. So both sides of the story. We have the human community with Spinner. We have the AI with Vengo AI, and it seems like investors are more interested in Vengo AI these days. So that's kind of what we're pushing. And Spinner is just organically growing on its own since the app is finished. Now we're just trying to raise money for Vengo. In the meantime, I'm pushing my podcast. It's number 2 in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, let's get back to that, why don't we, before I let you go here,
Yeah,
Jason. Strap On Your Boots, again, is the name of Jason's podcast. And you started talking a little bit about
yeah.
the most recent episode you did was a little bit about Ukraine and specifically the Ukraine Business Network. What is that?
So I mean, the guy behind it realized that the war has really disrupted a lot of things in Ukraine, of course, and he realizes there's a lot of talented people out there. And the easy way to explain it is he was able to figure out a way to help these talented people in Ukraine get hired by people outside of the Ukraine, Europe, America, any kind of job you can think of. And that's what the network is for, is to connect these talented individuals with companies outside of Ukraine. So I thought it was a really cool episode if people want to listen to it. I have several hundred episodes.
Right.
So,
there's
so, so
there's a
so
lot.
you're going to find a lot of great content. And the origin story is that Strap On Your Boots was actually my book. It was a guidebook. It is a guidebook about startups, and it's very realistic. A lot of these quote unquote gurus that sell you a master class or a book on how to be successful, it's all BS. They had one time in their life they got really lucky, where they had money come in from a family member and they were able to buy real estate at a certain time, or they always had this really lucky thing happen to them that's you can't duplicate. And I got sick and tired of that. So in 2015, I wrote this guidebook called Strap On Your Boots based on my previous learning experiences and successes and mistakes, that helps people learn how to build a business or a startup from scratch without spending any money. If you just put in the time from the actionable advice and homework and examples that I give you in the book, you're able to then build your own business. And it was doing really well from the perspective of me giving it to different entrepreneurship programs at universities in Philadelphia, where these PhD students came to me and said, hey, we want to introduce this as a course to entrepreneurship programs at UPenn, Temple, Drexel, all these area universities. So I worked on the course, took me 6 months to make, called Startup Essentials. And I taught it at UPenn's Wharton School of Business as a guest lecturer in 2017 and 2018, 2 semesters. And it was really successful. The students showed a lot more productivity, better success in the hackathons and the business courses. So a lot of people said to me, well, what's next? Like, I mean, now we have the book and the course, but we need more information. And a few people recommended you should do a podcast to continue the story, to continue giving us advice. So in 2018, before podcasting was cool, I started the Strap on Your Boots podcast. Again, it's a play on words. I was always a bootstrapped entrepreneur. I'm always bootstrapping my startups. So I figured strap on your boots. And that podcast started in 2018. 2019, I kept going. 2020, I kept going. The pandemic happens, and I'm already 2 years in. And I realized, well, I'm going to double down on this podcast because I got nothing else better to do.
Right, yeah.
So I doubled down, and it started to take off. I started to get people requesting to be on the podcast. I no longer had to look for people to be on the podcast. I was able to get a production team and an assistant. I started getting agencies reaching out to me, and it just became this big show. And now it's keeping me on my toes. It's keeping me pretty busy while I run my startups. And even during the pandemic, I was able to make my third movie, Cutting Corners, documentary. In 2021, I was able to finish that. So you can say I have my hands in a lot of pots. I'm always very creative and kind of always trying new things and starting new projects and finishing them. And that's just what I do. And with the podcast, I'm able to help other people learn what we know, me and other entrepreneurs, learn what we know and help them succeed in the way we have.
Well, Jason, I want to thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. Strap on Your Boots is the name of the podcast, Spinner, and a whole bunch of other things that you got going on. Before I let you go, if people want to follow you on any of the various social media platforms, you
Yeah, they'll
pick
find all
pick
my
a
links
few.
on yeah, if you go to jasonsherman.org, that has links to everything.
There you go. That's
If you,
probably the best way to do it because I bet there's a lot of links on there.
there are a lot of links.
All right, man. If I'm in Philly, I'm gonna look you up. We'll go to Tony Luke's.
That sounds good, man. I appreciate it, Chris. It was a pleasure being here.
Jason Sherman, everybody, strap on your boots again. Name of his podcast. Head over to his website as well. And thanks as always for checking out. There's Too Many Podcasts. It's a podcast about podcasts. More episodes to come, so stay tuned.